Hey everyone, it's Allie and welcome to my channel and welcome to my October book review and November TBR. Alright, so it has actually been a minute since I have sat down and filmed a video for honestly any of my channels. I do have a few, you can always find them linked down below at the bottom of my homepage, but October was a really crazy month for me. I had a few trips, and although my husband and I do travel a lot, we have a lot of family and friends that live in Pennsylvania, this month of October we did a lot of really fun trips that we had planned for a while. So I was in Massachusetts for a week and I am going to put that video out very soon. We also went down to the Cincinnati and Dayton area for a work trip for my husband. And I also just got back from Chicago where my husband and I saw Queen and it was amazing. If you like the band and you have an opportunity to see them, I would highly recommend. It was by far the biggest concert I have ever been to, and I bought the tickets like a year and a half ago, but it was so much fun. I had never been to Chicago before. It was a real quick trip. That was pretty much all we did. I was originally gonna vlog that trip as well, but literally all we really did was hang out in the hotel room. I read a book. My husband had work to do. We went to Millennium Park and just walked around. And we saw the concert and that was really it. But all that to say, I have been feeling very tired, kind of overwhelmed from that month, and I am absolutely behind on the content that I wanted to put out this season. But I am absolutely planning on putting out like 5 or 6 more videos during this month of November, and then I am going to be doing kind of a vlogmas or bookmas or whatever you want to call it. Because I do have other channels, I can commit, I feel like, to 12 days, and on my thrifting channel I will also be doing 12 days, so I'll be kind of going back and forth. So definitely get excited for that. I have missed filming and editing and I am really ready to get back into it. But alright, surprisingly for how busy the month of October was, I did get around to a solid amount of books. I feel like I read a lot of thrillers. I really like to read thrillers in general, but of course during the month of October, that was the genre that I was going to gravitate towards. And I do tend to get through thrillers a little bit faster than other genres, so I think that's why I was able to read so many. And just kind of looking at this stack, there were definitely some really good ones, some maybe minor disappointments, but overall it was a really good month. Okay, I feel like it's been a while since I have read some of these, so I gotta look back on my Goodreads. Definitely follow me on Goodreads. I do update it, as soon as I finish a book. So if you want to follow along more in real time with what I'm reading, definitely make sure to follow me on Goodreads, as well as my Instagram. You can follow me there. I would like to post more frequently on there. But up first, Alice Feeney's His and Hers. This was really, really good. I preferred this to Daisy Darker. I know that's a very popular book and I did enjoy Daisy Darker, but I guessed the ending, the big twist very early on in that book. And I feel like when that happens, it just makes me kind of go like, oh. So I love when thrillers have, multiple twists. So even if you do guess something, there are still more things to uncover. And that was true for Daisy Darker. But yeah, because I guessed the major one, I just didn't love it as much as I had hoped. And I did really, really enjoy this one. I almost felt like it was written by a different author. Like it felt different. The writing style felt different to me for some reason. But yes, this was a fantastic thriller. I would highly recommend. I think I did get this from Book Outlet. It's probably still on there. Sometimes you do get some bent covers from Book Outlet, but I don't really care. But this is a great thriller in my book for many reasons. It has 2 main perspectives and you are finding out more information about each person as you go along in the book. The narrators are a little unreliable at times, which I do really, really enjoy in a thriller. There were some pretty dark moments. I did say on my Goodreads review, definitely a trigger warning for sexual abuse. There are some pretty horrific scenes in this book, so if that is something that you are afraid could be problematic for you, I wouldn't recommend picking this one up. But there are lots of twists and turns throughout the story. It definitely kept me engaged. I could have read this in one sitting if I had the time. But the 2 main people that the story is following are, it says newsreader, but basically journalist, Anna Andrews, and then Detective Jack Harper. So you're kind of seeing two different sides of the case unfolding, and over time you find out how these two people are connected. And then to follow that up, we had a 5-star read, and I feel like I don't often give thrillers 5 stars. I do give a lot between 4 to 4.5, but a lot of times there is something that's just a little bit off that keeps a book at a 4.5 rather than essentially like the perfect 5-star. But this one was fantastic. I really could find no wrong with it, and I know a lot of people do feel the same about this one. So this is Lisa Jewell's None of This Is True, and I do have some more Lisa Jewell on my TBR shelf, and I just haven't read it yet. I know I've picked up a few over time from Book Outlet, like when I can get them quite cheap, and after reading this, I definitely want to read a lot more from her soon. But I find as someone who does read a lot of thrillers that a lot of the stories can kind of blend together. You have a hard time remembering them after a while, but this one I did think had a very unique perspective. It follows two birthday twins, two women that are born on the same day. They encounter each other in a restaurant, and they form a friendship, partnership, whatever you want to call. And the two women are very, very different. There is a lot of unreliable narrator in this story, and I literally did stay up all night finishing this one because it was so good I could not put it down. And I would call this more of like a psychological thriller as well, which are my favorites. I am a psych person. That was my undergraduate degree. So anytime there's like a psychological, mental health aspect to books, I really, really enjoy it. Now we have a young adult book. This is Karen M. McManus. She wrote the One of Us Is Lying series, and I think I only read the first one, so I kind of want to revisit that because I think it is a trilogy, and I really, really like this author. I think she's a really nice writing style, and if you like thrillers but are more of a young adult fan, she is absolutely someone that you want to check out. But this book, Nothing More to Tell, is definitely one of my favorites that I've read from her. It's in the academic setting, which I really, really enjoy, and it definitely gave off strong A Good Girl's Guide to Murder vibes. That was a 5-star trilogy from me. I've talked about it a lot before, so I'm not going to blab on, but if you like that series, I think you should definitely check this one out. But just a couple sentences from the blurbs. 4 years ago, Bryn left St. Ambrose School following the shocking murder of her favorite teacher. The case was never solved. Now that Bryn is moving home and starting her dream internship at a true crime show, she's determined to find out what really happened. This was another one that I did read very quickly, and I absolutely did not see the twist coming. The next thriller is Mr. Nobody by Catherine Steadman. I did read this one that is pictured here first, Something in the Water. I think I read that maybe over the summertime, and I really did enjoy that book. I will say I think I did enjoy that one a little bit more than Mr. Nobody, and it just seems from the reviews that most people feel the same. So if you are looking to read your first Catherine Steadman, I would recommend Something in the Water over this one. I did enjoy this book more than the average person, I will say. The average review on Goodreads is a 3.6. I did give it a 4. I think it took me probably almost a week to get through. It was a little bit slower, but there is a lot of psychological stuff going on. So if you are a psych person like me, I do think you will enjoy this one. There are twists and turns throughout. It's just not uber fast paced, but I think it's an interesting concept. There is a man who washes up on the beach, basically. He's found by some locals and he can't really remember anything. So they take him to the hospital. They end up calling in a neuropsychiatrist, Dr. Emma Lewis, because she is kind of an expert in the field. And so she meets Mr. Nobody. She starts to try to learn more about him, and throughout the book you are learning more about her as well. Next, I read Starling House, which is one that I know a lot of people read this past month or last couple months, so definitely let me know down below if you read this one and what you thought about it. I will be honest, I feel like the cover really drew me in, and the blurb as well. This girl, Opal, she is really drawn to this like spooky, mysterious house. And I love thrillers that are closely connected to houses because I am a huge lover of homes, I guess. I'm a huge house nerd. And I think it's really fun when you tie in like a dark thriller and some fantasy as well. So I really thought that this was going to be a 5-star read for me. Unfortunately, this ended up being a 3.5. I really wanted to love it, as I said, but I just didn't. I found it a bit slow at some points. I had a hard time getting sucked into it. I will say like the last like 100 pages or so, I was quite captivated, and I'm glad I read it, but it really wasn't a standout to me. But if you do like a little bit of a slower, dark academia type of story, I think you would like this one. And I didn't love the main character as well, so I think that kind of hurt the book for me too. But it is an absolutely gorgeous cover, and I did see many 5-star reviews, so I think this one just wasn't really for me. Unfortunately, another 3.5 that I was really hoping would be, you know, probably like a 4.5. I don't think I expected this one to be a 5-star because it is more of a romance, and I'm not a huge romance girly, as you guys know by now. But this is The Dead Romantics. I had this on my TBR shelf for probably about a year. I might have picked it up like at the end of the fall season last year, or I just didn't get around to it, and I definitely did want to read it during the fall season, just because of the vibes, of course. Although this is actually set more in spring, I think. But I thought this was gonna be kind of like a cutesy, rom-com kind of romance involving someone who was not alive, but it was a lot darker and sadder than I thought it was going to be. So just kind of know that if you have not yet picked this one up. And trigger warning, I would say, like if you have recently lost a parent, this one might be either good for you or bad for you to read. The main character has recently lost her father at the beginning of the story. And there are some really cute moments. I did enjoy actually the romance aspect of the book more than the core story of the main character kind of working through her father's death. Those just are not like my favorite kind of books, to be honest, where there's a lot of like inner dialogue and, you know, just kind of like trying to work through family difficulties, stuff like that. I don't tend to love those kinds of stories. If you do like stories about families working through things together, you probably will like this one. I know a lot of people have given this one 5 stars. So again, like Starling House, not bad by any means, I think just not really for me, and it wasn't what I expected. But thankfully, following 2 3.5 reviews in a row, which is pretty low for me, I really never give books lower than 3 stars. When I rate books, I absolutely look at like if the writing was good, if the story was good. So sometimes I'll even give a book that I really didn't like a whole lot 4 stars if I thought the writing was really good, the story was really good, it just maybe wasn't quite for me. But anyway, following those, I had a really good 5-star read, and that is The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. I think this one did take me about, 5 to 7 days to get through because it is quite dense, like every word is very important. But the blurb says that Evelyn Hardcastle will be murdered at 11 p.m. There are 8 days and 8 witnesses for you to inhabit. We will only let you escape once you tell us the name of the killer. Understood? Then let's begin. So every day, the main character, Aiden Bishop, is waking up in a new witness's body, and he's reliving the same day over and over again from these different people's perspectives. And I just thought this was very well written. Like I said, every word is important, so you have to be in the mood for a book like this. You have to be ready to focus. It's not going to be just a quick thriller read, but it was so satisfying. I thought it was very clever. There's a lot going on, but it does all make sense in the end. And, sometimes you read books like this and that's just not really how it wraps up. This will absolutely be a top book of the year for me, maybe even top couple, we'll see. And it's kind of funny because I did not plan it, but after that book, I did pick up Wrong Place, Wrong Time by Gillian McAllister. And this is the first book that I have read from this author, and I'm definitely interested in reading more. But this was another time loop book, and it was very, very different from The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle, but absolutely I did prefer the Evelyn Hardcastle book to this one. This reading experience was, I would say, more typical to that of just a regular thriller where you have to pay attention, but you can probably read this in like a night or 2 nights or so. This one I did actually rate, I said somewhere between a 3.75 and a 4. I did like the story overall, but I found it pretty slow in the middle. If I had found it a little bit faster, I think it would have been more of a 4 to even 4.5. But how it starts is the main character, she's a mom, and She sees her teenage son murder someone in the night, and her son gets picked up, he's taken to jail and everything. But then the next day, the mom wakes up in the past, and she keeps waking up in the past, but it's not necessarily like the day before, then the day before that. She jumps back to different points in time, but it's always farther and farther in the past. And each day that she wakes up, she is finding out more about what leads her son to commit this murder. So I did really like that overall concept. I just thought maybe it could have been shaved down a little bit, maybe a little bit more action in the middle, but I do very much appreciate that this is very different than a lot of thrillers, and it's one that I absolutely will remember and I would recommend. All right, another one of my favorite covers, and I was really hoping to give this one 5 stars. This is Jessica Knoll's Bright Young Women. I did get this one, as you can see, as an add-on from Book of the Month. This one was another one that was around a 3.75 for me. So even though I do think this was a good month of reading, it was probably overall like one of the lowest rated months, I would say, for books. So about this one, I will say it really was not what I expected. What I expected when I got this book, and this is me going in blind, I'm sure if I would have read more reviews before I read it, I would have understood what this book is about. But just in case you're like me and you kind of got the wrong idea of the book, I'll just kind of tell you what I think. I thought this was going to be just kind of like a typical, totally fictional psychological thriller inspired by Ted Bundy's killings, like, you know, maybe an attractive serial killer type situation, but for the most part pretty made up. And when you do look up this book, it does say thriller, psychological thriller, as well as historical fiction. I would classify this much more as historical fiction mixed with nonfiction. There are some like straight up facts about like the Ted Bundy case in here and about some of the people who were murdered. So there's definitely strong like nonfiction parts to the story, but then there are other parts that are definitely very fictionalized. But I do not think that this reads like a thriller at all. I think it reads much more like historical fiction, nonfiction. So it was good, but just know that going into it, I was expecting one thing and got something else. I do love historical fiction and I do like nonfiction as well. So I didn't mind this overall, and I think I would have rated it a little bit higher if I had known that going in, I guess. The one thing that I really did appreciate about this book, though, is that the author was very passionate about calling Ted Bundy the defendant. She never says his name once in the whole book, and the main focus is on the victims and their story, and I am totally down with that. I definitely understood what she was trying to do with this book. All right, and the last one I read for the month, I read this on Halloween evening. I read it in probably just like an hour and a half or so. This is a cute little novella. It's called Bubble Bubble, Toil and Cuddle. As I shared in the book haul video where I originally shared this story, it was recommended by darling Desi from that channel. Unfortunately, I wouldn't say I have quite as strong, happy vibes from it as she did. It was very cute in some ways, but it is like hardcore Harry Potter-esque to the point where it's a little too much copying in my opinion. If you are someone who really wanted like Hermione and Draco to end up together, I think you would really like this story. There is like a very cute romance that goes on. I did really like that aspect. It was just like the overall setting was very similar to Harry Potter. But if you know that going in and you take the story for what it is and you kind of like look at it almost as like a Harry Potter side quest, I think you'll really enjoy it. As I said, the romance was very sweet and it does end on a cliffhanger. I don't know if I will pick up the next book, but yeah, if you are someone who really wants to read like a little Harry Potter side quest, I would recommend it. Ultimately, I did give it between a 3 and 3.5. There were some edits that needed to be made. And yeah, the whole very close to Harry Potter, I do have a slight issue with. But all right, now let's quickly run through all of my November hopefuls, I will say, because I am filming this, I think the day it's gonna go up, November 8th. And I have finished 2 books out of all of these, and one of them is a novella. I think just kind of after all of the traveling of October and reading quite a bit for all that traveling, I just kind of got in a little bit of a reading rut. I just have been watching more television and stuff, but I am ready to get back into my reading grind, and I do really, really want to read all of these books. So I'm not going to talk about these too much. I'll talk about them in the next review, but the two that I have read already are Killjoy, which is the novella that goes along with A Good Girl's Guide to Murder series, and then also Hotel Magnifique. Beautiful, beautiful cover. This one I think is a really great one to read during this month of November. I personally see like October as a lot of thrillers, and then November a lot of like dark fantasy. This one I think you will really like if you liked The Night Circus, if you read that story. That was, I think, at least a 4.5, if not even a 5-star read from me. So I would definitely say I preferred The Night Circus to Hotel Magnifique. But yeah, similar energy. There's a lot of good stuff going on in this story. It's a really fun, fantastical world, and this hotel moves around from place to place. And the main character and her sister end up working for the hotel, but it is not as picture perfect as they hoped. All right, I also want to read Once Upon a Broken Heart. I feel like everybody is loving this series. And as I said before, I'm really not too much of a romance girly, but I do actually really enjoy romantasy or like romance with historical fiction. I just don't love when like romance is the primary focus and there's not really anything else too interesting going on in the story. So I think this is going to be one where maybe I just kind of stay in for one evening and just get through the whole book. Okay, I can't say I'm so excited for all of these because it is true, but this one I think is going to be quite interesting. This is called Lightlark. I recently picked this one up from a book outlet, and this one just seems like it's very Hunger Games vibes because it says every 100 years the island of Lightlark appears for only 100 days to host a deadly game where the rulers of 6 realms fight to break their curses and win unparalleled power. And I know that there's definitely going to be some strong romance in here because it says, to survive, Isla Crown must lie, cheat, betray, even as a love complicates everything. And yeah, even one of the reviews on the back says, if the Hunger Games was a dark fairy tale, you'd get the vicious and enchanting Lightlark. This is one I'm probably gonna read between some of these like meatier fantasy novels. This is called Ravenfall, another just absolutely gorgeous like November cover. I really want to get to this one because if not, I literally have to wait till next year to read it. 13-year-old Annabella comes from a psychic family and they all use their abilities to help run the Ravenfall Inn, but it says it's hard to contribute when your only power is foreseeing death. And then a 14-year-old boy, Colin Pierce, comes to the Airbnb and he's looking for his older brother, and Anna is going to help him find him. So this is a pretty quick one. I think this is considered a middle grade, not a young adult. So I'm sure it's going to be a nice quick read. The nights are getting so dark so quickly now, and I feel like I'm so much more inclined to just sit down and read like a whole book in like 4 or 5 hours in a night where I don't have much going on. And these are the kind of books I love to do that with because it's not like so exhausting to read for that long when it is kind of more of a middle grade or young adult story, I feel like. All right, next up, Fourth Wing. I'm actually gonna read this very soon. I might read like that Ravenfall next and then dive into this. As I am recording this, it is November 8th, and I believe the second one should be showing up on my doorstep today. And I do really want to film a reading vlog where I read both of these books. It took me a while to get this one because I was a little late on the bandwagon, and by the time I was like, oh, I do want to read The Fourth Wing, they were sold out everywhere. So by the time I got this, I feel like in like August, and I knew that the second one was coming out very soon, I decided I would just, go ahead and wait so I could read the second one right after the first. So hopefully I love it. I'm sure I will. Everyone I know who has read it has really, really enjoyed it. Next, I have two that I'm just going to talk about in the same vein because I think one was like inspired by the other or they're very similar. And the first is Donna Tartt's The Secret History, and then If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio. And these two I've been wanting to read for a long time, and I knew I just had to read them during the month of November. I'm really hoping I can get through both of them. I think they might be a little bit dense, so they might take me a few days each to read. These ones I don't know too much about. I know they're super dark academia vibes. It says on the back of The Secret History that under the influence of a charismatic classics professor, a group of clever, eccentric misfits at a New England college discover a way of thought and life a world away from their banal contemporaries. But their search for the transcendent leads them down a dangerous path beyond human constructs of morality. And it actually is described as a psychological thriller. I wasn't sure really what the genre was, so that's interesting. I really enjoyed The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt. That's the only one that I have ever read from her, but I thought it was super well written. Some of these reviews on the back say this is very well written. And books like this, I feel like I either really don't like or they're 5-star reads. Yeah, and then If We Were Villains, I believe is the one that was inspired by Secret History. It says Oliver is one of 7 young Shakespearean actors at Delature Classical Conservatory, a place of keen ambition and fierce competition. In the secluded world of firelight and leather-bound books, Oliver and his friends play the same roles on stage and off. So very interesting. I might do another vlog that's like very dark academia themed, and I read both this one and Secret History. So do let me know if you'd like to see that. Then to lighten things up, we've got Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree, I think is how you would say that last name. And this is just described as like a super cozy book. I'm a little bit nervous about this one. I know a lot of people love it, but people say it's like so cozy that like nothing happens. So this might be one as if I start reading it, if I'm really not enjoying it, I probably will just DNF it because I do have a lot of other great books I want to read and this just might not be for me. Or it might be the perfect break I need after reading some like heavy books like the last 2. Just a few more, you guys. It'll be a miracle if I can read all of them, but I want to have the options because I am such a mood reader that even if I really want to read all of these right now, I might have to throw a thriller in here or something to break up all of this fantasy because it's a lot. So this one is The Hazelwood. I love this cover. This is by Melissa Albert. Never read anything else from her. This says that 17-year-old Alice and her mother have spent most of Alice's life on the road, always one step ahead of the uncanny bad luck biting at their heels. But when Alice's grandmother, the reclusive author of a book of pitch dark fairy tales, dies alone on her estate, the Hazelwood, Alice discovers how bad her luck can really get. Her mother is stolen away, and to rescue her, Alice must venture first to the Hazelwood and then into the world where her grandmother's tales began, and where she might discover why her own story went so wrong. And it got a Best Book of the Year by a lot of different publications. This one is maybe, besides Fourth Wing, probably my most anticipated book of the month. I definitely want to read this very close to the movie coming out, so a little bit later in the month. But this is The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes by Suzanne Collins. This is a prequel to The Hunger Games, and I really did enjoy The Hunger Games stories. And it's been quite a while, so I am very excited to dive into a new story from that world and see that movie, which looks super good. And then last but certainly not least, we have this gorgeous copy of The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, which I cannot believe that I haven't read yet, but I didn't get around to it last year and I did want to wait and read it in the dark academia season. I know this is a lot of people's like favorite book, 5-star book, and I have a very strong feeling that I will think the same. But just in case you don't know the general vibe of this one, it says, France 1714, in a moment of desperation, a young woman makes a bargain to live forever and is cursed to be forgotten by everyone she meets. But everything changes when after nearly 300 years, Addie stumbles across a young man in a hidden bookstore and he remembers her name. So yes, that was my October review and all of my November hopefuls. Definitely let me know down below what you are reading this month. My goal for the year was to read 100 books. Right now I'm at 71, so it's not super likely that I'm gonna hit the 100, but who knows, I'm gonna do my best. Last year I read 83, so really I just wanna beat that goal. But if you like this video, please make sure to give me a big thumbs up and subscribe. It really does help my channel out a lot. But thanks again for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.